Good morning. All right, they did not leave microphones, so I'm loud. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
We're good? All right. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about how to make coffee at home, right? Not roast coffee at home, but make coffee at home. It's been a topic that's been kind of a theme of our companies from the get-go, and I'll talk through that in a little bit. And you'll see me walking back and forth because the touch screen's not working. All right, a little bit about us. This is our crew. I'm Dwayne Alford. I am the owner of District 10 Coffee Company. Started out as a little hobby, probably around 2017, where I just wanted to roast coffee at home, right? I bought a little coffee roaster about this big and just started playing around with it. I wanted a coffee that I could use for every style of coffee that I make at home, right? I had an espresso machine. I always like pour over a French press. And I wanted to make something for myself that would work for all of that. Conveniently enough, it worked out. That's actually the house blend that we're using today in our mobile coffee truck, and what everybody's tasting. The two boys here, Caleb and Gavin, they're twins. They're my sons. They run the day-to-day operation. I still maintain the roasting because it's fun, but they run the truck everywhere. Matter of fact, Gavin is in the process of moving to Hilton Head and taking one of the trucks with him. So we're going to do that. This is my wife, Rhonda. She's actually here. She's the accountant. She's the one to make sure they get paid. And then up at the top is Maddox. He's our newest team member. He's the first one not in the family in the business, but he's great. He's been working with us for about 3 weeks now and absolutely crushing it. We believe that the best coffee shops in America are in our houses. We believe that so much that we actually put instructions on the back of our bags when we got our bags printed on how to make coffee. Because it's how it started, right? I've started making it at home, and I think that people should be able to make good coffee at home. So that's what the whole premise of this presentation is about. Now, I do cybersecurity and network engineer by trade, so I'm going to nerd out a little bit, so hopefully y'all are okay with that. All right, first, 3 keys to good coffee at home. I'm going to emphasize grinding a lot here because grinding makes a big deal in your coffee. Storage is another big deal in making good coffee, and then obviously using fresh coffee, right? So when you talk about grinding, the reason that's such a big deal is because the grind drives the extraction, right? Obviously you got hot water, but the grind size gives you the extraction. And then the type of coffee you're brewing is dependent on the way you want to grind it, right? So that's a big deal. I'm actually gonna spend a lot more slides on this. Storage, myth busting. Don't put your coffee in the freezer. Don't do that. The best way to store coffee is in the bag that it comes in. Almost all coffee bags have a valve in them. It's a one-way valve. It's to let carbon dioxide out and to keep fresh air from getting in. If you don't drink coffee fast enough that the bag doesn't work for you, put it in an airtight container, a dark airtight container, not a lighted airtight container that's clear. And then the last one is fresh, right? I'm actually going to pass this around. Don't buy old coffee. Unfortunately, at the grocery store, most coffee's old, right? I actually started to buy some grocery store coffee to use in this example, but I didn't think that was really fair. So this is my coffee, right? This coffee was roasted on 1/16, and this coffee was roasted on Wednesday. So I'm gonna pass it around. Everybody can tell the difference, right? This is 4-ish, 5-ish weeks old, which is what most grocery store coffee is. This is 4 days old. So I'm gonna pass it around. Everybody will be able to tell the difference when you smell it. I don't think you need to smell it.
You can smell it at home.
So this is the old one, this is the new one.
Very cool, thank you.
And if you think I'm full of it, tell me, I don't mind. You're first.
You don't appear to be lying. There's a big difference.
There is a big difference, right? So,
Yeah.
all right, grinding. Again, the grind affects the extraction. The extraction affects the taste. The more extracted, when you taste bitter coffee, that's an over-extracted coffee, right? That means it's either steeped too long, it was ground too fine, something between the water and the grinds not matching the coffee, right? When you taste bitter coffee. Now, smoky coffee, that's very different. That's a dark roasted coffee, right? So when you see dark roasted coffee, taste for bitterness, don't taste for smokiness. Smokiness can just come from fresh, dark roasted coffee. I don't roast a lot of dark roasted coffee because it ruins your grinders and all that fun stuff because it makes it very oily. But there is a difference between smoky coffee and bitter coffee. Bitter coffee is over-extracted coffee. The type of grinder you need at home is not a blade grinder. Save that for your jalapenos. You need a burr grinder, and what the difference is, a blade grinder makes a very inconsistent grind, right? It cuts and chops the coffee beans, and it does not have a consistent formation to it. A burr grinder somewhat crushes the bean, right? So it makes a very consistent grinder, and they're very, very easy to tune, a burr grinder. So you can tune it from coarse to extra fine. Extra fine is your espresso range, right? And there's even Turkish coffee down here as well, right? But most people know espresso coffee. Fine, medium, and coarse. Burr grinder can get you just as accurate as you want it. And so you can use your grinder along with your water and find the grind that works for your taste, right? That's the biggest thing for me is make it match your taste. I'm not one of these folks that think it has to taste a certain way. I'm not one of these folks that think you can't have milk in your coffee. Do your coffee your way, right? It's your coffee. But the grinder is the key to doing that. And if anybody has any questions, please throw them up. All right. This is examples of the coffee. We're actually going to do a close-up of these. This is really cool because this is from, my son's got a macro lens, so he's took some really cool pictures of each of these up close. Espresso, very fine, kind of powdery, fluffy, light. That's what you want in your espresso grind. A medium fine grind, think of that like play sand, maybe sand at the ocean, something like that, you know. That's perfect for like a pour-over style coffee. Then your regular traditional drip coffee, right? You want a medium for that. That's to make sure that, because the way the extraction goes with a drip coffee is it just fills the pour and it's a slow extraction, right? So you want it a little bit more coarse than your pour over. Now, you may have heard that different. Like some people will tell you, you're supposed to do a little coarse one pour over. I'm telling you the way I've done it for many, many years, and this makes a much better pour over coffee. And then for your French press and cold brew, you want a coarse grind. Yeah, let's go to the next slide so you can see it up close. That's the espresso. That's up close, right? And you see what I'm saying? It's fluffy, right? It's powdery, and it packs really tight. So the key to espresso is making sure that it's packed really tight, and a slow extraction through this coffee makes a good espresso. Pour over, it's a medium fine. I like the medium fine for a pour over because there's this concept called brewed, and if I have time, I'm going to try to demo a pour over for us if all the power holds up in here. But there's a concept called blooming, right? And that's where you wet your pour over coffee first and let it set for about a minute. That's the reason I like a little bit finer grind, because it gives a much nicer bloom. You can smell the coffee coming out of it. And pour over, in my opinion, is a very, it plays in your senses, right? Because it's not just visually appealing, it doesn't just taste good, it also smells very good. That's one reason I like pour over so much. But again, that's kind of like the, I call it like builder sand or sand at the ocean kind of texture. Then this is what you would do for your drip coffee. This looks grainy because of the type of lens, right? So you're probably looking at it thinking, man, my coffee doesn't look that thick. But it is. That's just a very, very up close picture of what drip coffee looks like ground from fresh. More gravelly kind of texture is what you want to think about with that. So you've got your powdery espresso, you've got your sand for the pour over, then you've got a kind of a gravel feel for your drip coffee. And then your coarse, that's for your cold brew and your French press. The reason we want to go so coarse on these is because of the way you extract, right? Cold brew is a very long cold water extraction, and French press is a much shorter time, but you're using hot water, and the coffee's just setting in the hot water. I actually have a French press here. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. That's the end of my emphasis on grinding. Anybody have any questions on grinding? Yes?
So espresso is the grind of coffee, not the type of coffee.
It's a very good question. That's exactly right. So, and I was actually going to bust this myth on my espresso slide, but a lot of people think espresso is supposed to be dark roast coffee, right? I need espresso roast. That's not valid. The espresso is the type of coffee you're drinking, right? It's the extracted, concentrated coffee that's pulled through a very fine grain coffee. We don't use dark roast for our espresso, and it turns out very, very good. That answer your question?
Yes.
Perfect. No problem. All right. Now, we're going to get into the types of brewing. And forgive me if I don't hit everybody's, right? Because somebody was talking about a percolator earlier today. I don't cover percolator. I think it was you. Yeah. I don't cover percolator in here, but I can talk about it if you want me to. So, espresso machine. I think this is the ultimate control coffee, right? This is actually our coffee. This is our espresso machine. Pros: excellent coffee, unlimited drink options, right? You can make anything you can think of. Traditional Americanos, right? That's made from espresso. That's the European version of a drip coffee. The espresso machines look great in your kitchen, right? They're very, very good focal points for your espresso bar or your coffee bar or your kitchen. Cons: they're expensive, right? Because of the type of pressure that are put on these machines, they're very expensive. Now you can get some cheaper ones that they won't hold up and they don't do a very good extraction, but you will spend at least $200 to $300 on a very base model espresso machine. And then the other con to espresso is there's a very large learning curve. There's a lot into espresso. There's the getting the grind right. There's the tamping of the espresso. There's the timing of the water. All of that goes into a good espresso. So it's a very complex system. However, it's fantastic. If you have the time, you have the resources and you want it, I highly recommend everybody having an espresso machine. When you're brewing espresso, there's a ratio to it, right? It's 18 to 20 grams of coffee, somewhere in there, depending on your coffee, the way it's roasted and everything. And then somewhere between 36 to 40 grams of liquid, so water. And that water needs to be maintained at about 205. You want your brew time through your portafilter. This is the portafilter. So this is the actual magic that happens, right? You've got your coffee in here, you got your water pressure from the top, and it's coming out of the portafilter into the espresso class. You want that to happen somewhere between 25 to 30 seconds, right? So again, very complex to make good espresso. But it's 20 grams of coffee, 40 grams of liquid, 25 to 30 seconds for you to get 2 ounces out of that coffee maker. And then the grind size is, again, very fine. Any questions on espresso? All right. Next one, drip coffee maker. Convenience and consistency. Everybody's probably got a drip coffee maker in their house if they're in this room. Pros to it, you can set it and forget it. It's great for brewing multiple cups. It's also works for pre-ground coffee, right? So you can grind it early and get that made. You know, a lot of people use it for their alarm clock, right? You set the thing the night before, the smell of the coffee wakes you up the next day. The cons, you have less control, right? Like with the espresso machine, you have a lot of control. With this, you have less control, right? You can have two different brewers that bring water pressure out slightly different, and it's going to affect the taste of your coffee. I can't see what my thing says.
What's like the ratio of water for, I guess it's, for like 1 cup, how much tablespoons of coffee?
So Americans like tablespoons, right? And a lot of coffee is done in grams. But yes, so
You gotta have it easy for me.
what's that?
You gotta make it easy.
Right. So if you're doing out of a brewer, if you're doing a single cup brewer, my tip is to put a little extra coffee in. Right. So I like 2 full tablespoons in my coffee if I'm doing a single cup. Now, if I'm doing an 8 cup or 10 cup, I don't do that same ratio. And there's a reason. You're going to make a mess if you do it with fresh coffee, right? There's a bloom concept of fresh coffee where it's going to rise itself and make it bigger. And if you look at the back of a Starbucks bag, they're going to tell you to put like 10 tablespoons in a 10 cup of coffee. You will make an absolute mess if you use fresh coffee in your house for that because it's going to just flow, it's going to run over. But for just the way I do it, if I'm doing just a single cup out of a brewer, I do it a little bit stronger because it's going to spread it out. You're going to need a little bit extra extraction because you're only making 1 cup at a time. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you're doing a full size, 10 cups, my recommendation is 40 grams of coffee, which is 4 to 6 tablespoons. Now that's a big swing from what I just told you about 2 cups, but that's again because of the reasons I just said. And then the grind size here, we're going to do medium. Quick pro tip, and I tell this to every house I walk in as my family members, don't buy glass carafes, right? They will burn your coffee, right? If you are the type of person, if you work at home or work in an office and you make a pot of coffee because you know you're going to drink 2 or 3 cups of coffee over the next hour and a half, that glass pot is going to burn your coffee. There's no way around it. I always recommend upgrading. There's usually $5 or $10 more to a insulated carafe that keeps your coffee fresh and there's no chance of that burner on the bottom scorching it, right? Think about it like a science experiment when you're in chemistry in college with the little burners, right? Those glass things, they just get hotter and hotter and hotter, right? That ruins your coffee. We've had restaurants ask us to put our coffee in their place and they use those kind of things and I'm like, I can't let you put my coffee in those glass cook burners. So that's just my pro tip on that is to don't use the glass carafes that come with the pots. All right, next one. Probably my favorite way to make coffee. I have a thing that I'd like to call slow coffee Sunday because I take my time and I make this a lot of days on Sunday mornings, because it takes some time. It's a lot of fun. It gives you the smells, gives you the visuals and everything else. Pros of this. It's bright, complex, right? You can smell the floral flavors coming out of good coffee when you make this. You get full control over everything when you're making with this, right? You can control your bloom, you can control your extraction, you can control your grind. All of that is done through that machine. And it's perfect for single cup brewing, right? It is absolutely perfect for that. I will usually brew about 16 ounces with mine, just because either like a big cup or I'm having to share. The cons, it requires precision and patience, right? You're not going to get a cup of coffee in 2 minutes. It's going to take 5 to 10 minutes to make your cup of coffee. And it's not ideal for large batches, right? It's just, you're going to have to make multiples or something. Kind of for the ratios. This is a little heavier ratio too. Yes?
How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you put coffee in that?
I'll show you. I'm going to do a demo. As long as the power holds up, I'm going to demo this. Because there's a little art to it, right? And I want everybody to be able to see how to make that. Ratio, if you're doing a single 8-ounce cup, 15 to 18 grams of coffee, and 250 grams of water, 8 ounces. For 16 ounce, I go with 30 grams for mine, and 475 grams of water comes out to about a 16 ounce cup of coffee. Yes?
For your bloom, do you allow it to bloom at a different time depending on the coffee that you are brewing?
I do, and I do it by look, right?
You do it by look.
Yeah, whenever I first wet the bed of coffee, it'll bloom up. And then when it starts kind of like aerating itself, that's enough, right? You can go, it's usually about a minute to a minute and a half, and then you can start going from there.
Oh, you go a minute to a minute.
I do take about at least a minute whenever I'm doing that first bloom, yes.
I've only done 30 seconds. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, depending on the way the coffee's ground, the roast of the coffee and everything, I just look at it. When it starts making the aerated look, I'm ready to go to the next step. And the grind size is medium fine. And again, I like to fine a little bit finer than what you'll hear a lot of people talk about this because it gets a better extraction for me. I like the extraction out of a cold brew. Did everybody smell the coffee? Is it still going around? Does everybody agree with me that the fresh roasted is big difference, right? That's my coffee, so I'm not putting that up against anybody's. That's 4 weeks apart from my coffee. All right. French press. I love a French press too. Let me make sure. Oh, pro tip on this one, yeah. The trick here is to warm the glass carafe by rinsing your filter, right? I like to start with a wet filter, so I use the hot water to heat this up before I actually start brewing. French press. I love a French press, right? Some people call it dirty coffee. Yeah. It's because this got oils in it, right? You keep the natural oil. You got a metal filter in this coffee maker, and it allows the natural oils to be in the coffee at all times, even when you pour it in your cup. So I'll start with the pro tip. Oil in the cup when you're finished is A-OK for a French press. That's what you want. But people do refer to this as a dirty coffee. All right, pros of French press. It's bold. You can get really good, bold flavors out of your coffee. And it maintains the natural oils. Matter of fact, there's a lot of science now saying that those natural oils are good for you, so maybe that's a good thing. You don't require paper filters for these. They all come with a metal filter, and they're very simple, very affordable units. You can get these things as cheap as $12-15 from Target. Cons, if you don't grind it properly, right? Grinding, I'm emphasizing grinding in this thing big time. If you don't grind it properly, you will end up gritting your coffee. Nobody likes that. That's really dirty coffee. And then if you leave it there, it's going to continue to brew because there's no way to get it away because all you're doing is pressing it down, but the water's still staying in there, so that's going to continue to brew as long as you leave water in there. Here you've got a coarse grind coffee for look at there, I made a mistake. 32 ounces, 63 grams of coffee. Oh, no, that's the water, and 950 grams of water. That's the ratio. So that's a 1-15 with a coarse grind coffee. You brew it from 4 to 5 minutes. And the grind size is coarse. Same exact grind size as your cold brew if you make cold brew. One trick I do that I should have put it on here is when I do that first pour, I pour about half of my water, and then I take a non-metallic something and stir it. Right? I don't like using like metallic spoons, like kitchen spoons, in my pour over because I can taste it sometimes. So I try to use like a coated or non-metallic spoon, but I stir it halfway through. So I let it sit for about a minute on that first pour, then I stir it real good, then I finish my pour, and then I let it sit for the rest of the 5 minutes. Yes?
For the natural oils, is that like the frothy look at the top, or do you scoop that out before you press it?
No, do not scoop it out.
Okay.
Do not. That is the bloom. The frothy look is the bloom of the coffee. So do not scoop that out. That's part of the coffee. The oil is the actual, when you get through with this, you'll have an oily film on the outside. Thank you. That's what you want to maintain. Yeah. Very different than the bloom.
So the brew time include the time, the minute to bloom? Or is that 4 to 5 minutes after that?
I go 5 minutes, and that includes the bloom. Yeah. And that includes the 1 minute. I kind of let that bloom happen, and then I stir it in, right? So that's about 1 minute for the bloom time of that first pour, about half of the water that you're going to use. Stir it in, and then finish it. Again, this is really, really good coffee when you make it. To me, I like it a lot. All right, new kid on the block. Cold brew. I guess you can't really call it new at this point. Yes?
Sorry, can we take a step back on those different brewing methods? Do you recommend different temperature water?
I take 205 for everything, for hot, yes. You don't want it to boil. Another trick to that is if you don't have a perfect, precise timer for that, bring it to a boil and then count to 30 off the boil, and it'll be right about the right time. Yep. Yes?
Do you have a preference in pH?
I don't look at pH. No. I've never measured it. Some people do. Yeah. All right. Great questions, by the way. New kid on the block, cold brew. Cold brew's been out a while now. You can go some places and they still don't serve cold brew. But that's okay. We can make it good at home. The good thing about cold brew for me is the convenience, but it's also a low acid coffee because of the way it's brewed, right? It's brewed over a very long period of time. That does not bring the intensity and the acid with it, right? It kind of keeps that out of it. It can be stored for up to a week. Now, you can technically store it longer than that, but I'm not going to get in any trouble by telling you to do that. But a week's, you can store a week with no problem. And you have no heat, right? There's no heat requirements for this. Which actually really gives a very different taste profile, right? So if you go out to our booth, our house blend is what's used in our hot coffee and our cold brew, and they taste very different. Because it's extracted very differently. The cons is it takes a long time, right? You got to be patient. You're not going to make that coffee that morning and drink it that morning, and it requires some advanced planning because of the time it takes. Ratio: you want a 1-to-4 concentrate, or a 1-to-8 if you're ready to drink. So you can make ready to drink cold brew. It's still going to take you 12 hours, right? You just want to get the concentration different, and you want to grind it a little more fine. For a 32-ounce batch, which is this size, that's a cold brewer. I really like these too. They're cheap. You can get them from Amazon, and they make pretty good home cold brew. 180 grams of coffee, so about 20 tablespoons, and 32 ounces of water. Brew time between 12 and 24 hours. That's a little bit hard. It's hard to show this in a slide. When you're going for the 12-hour, grind it a little finer so that it'll extract a little faster. But you're not going to consider that a concentrate. You're going to consider that ready to drink, right? If you do the long brew time with the coarse grind, you're making a concentrate. And then you're going to want to cut that with water. So with this 32-ounce batch, you're probably going to end up, if you did a 20-hour brew, you're probably going to end up with about 24 ounces of concentrate. You'll want to add 24 ounces of water to that. That's how you make the perfect drink. Yes?
When you make the cold brew, do you let it sit in the fridge while you're extracting it? Or
Yes.
Do you let it sit out?
I put it in the fridge. I don't want anything sitting out. Might be paranoia, but I always put it in the fridge. Any other questions on cold brew? Yes.
How is it low in acid if it's like darker?
It's not necessarily darker, right? Because you got to remember, it's the same. The darkness is based off the roast of the coffee, right? So but you're brewing it with cold water, so you're not extracting it as fast. So it's actually, it's a lot of times can come out lighter looking than your actual dark, hot brewed coffee. So it's not any darker just because it's cold brew. Does that make sense? It's a slower release, slower extraction, but it's not anything to do with it being darker. We'll have a little more caffeine that way. You know. Does that help? Any more? Yes.
I'm not really familiar with cold brew. How do you, like similar to a French press, how do you get the grinds out of the coffee?
Good question.
Afterwards, or if you,
So like, if you look at this, it's got a filter basket, right? So you'll fill that up with your 20 or so tablespoons of coffee. And you will lose a little through there, right? Especially these filters like this. You can buy them with paper filters that hold it a little tighter. But yeah, it's got its own container. Unlike the French press, which you're just holding down, right? So that's how you keep it from coming out of the French press. So it holds it inside. Any more questions on cold brew? Yes.
You're talking about the ratios. That's coffee drawn mixed to water.
Yes. Yep. Coffee weight to water weight. Yes.
when you make a cold brew, if you're making like a pitcher, can you add, and you're gonna keep it for a week or a few days, can you put your cream in it so you don't have to do it each time?
Yeah, but just be careful with if it's dairy or whatever, you don't go past expiration or anything, right? Just be careful for safety reasons. Nobody likes that dairy gut. Yes.
So, back to the acidity thing, so adding hot water to coffee grinds makes it more acidic somehow,
The faster you extract it, the more acidic it can be. Yes.
so the slower process.
Yeah. Is that what you were asking? Is that okay? Yeah. The faster you extract it. So that's why a lot of Keurigs, very fast extracted coffee, give you a lot of acid reflux and stuff, right? And so that can happen because of the way it's extracted. Espresso's known for giving it too, right? Over extracted coffee is also very acidic and can give you acid reflux and things like that. But yeah.
When you say over extracted, so if you were to brew even cold brew too long, would that be over extracted?
It's really hard to over extract cold water in coffee. I've had extracting for 24 plus hours, and it still be fine. But yes, that's what I'm talking about, is letting the water and the coffee steep together too long. Yeah.
Like in a French brew, if you let it sit too long.
Very quickly, yes, that can happen. Yeah. Yeah, so like you go to like some fancy restaurants, right? They'll bring you a French press out for, just you individually. By the time you get to the bottom of that thing, it's very, very strong, very acidic coffee. Because it's just over extracted, yes.
So with a French press, like when you're gonna make a full one, do you recommend like heating up, let's say a Stanley
Yes,
thermos and then decanting your French press into your Stanley?
that's right. That's exactly what I do. I do that a lot, especially if I'm traveling, like if I need to go from here to Charleston or something, I'll make a French press and have a cup for later, and that I've carried, yeah. But you want to remove it from the grinds so that it stops extracting. Yes?
For one French press, like for one drink, how long do you brew the coffee for? 4 minutes?
5 minutes. I do 5 minutes every time, but it's somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes is what you want to do. Yep. Yep. With 205 water, not boiling water. If you go in with boiling, if it's already boiling, you're going to extract it much faster. Anything else?
If it's not boiling, how do you make it not boiling? You just
Take it.
cool or?
Yeah. So the trick I use, like if I didn't have this kettle, and I just had a boiling kettle, I count to 30. So I pick it up, count to 30. You'll hear the bubbles stop. You'll hear it come down, right? So boiling water is what, 212, something like that. When it gets to about 205, you count to 30, and it's stopped boiling at that point. You're below that boiling point. You don't have to worry about it as much.
Do you have something that shows you how, like you can boil it to a certain temperature? There's a machine that does that?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. This kettle, actually, I set the temperature on it. So I've got it set right now for 205. And it brings it there, and it'll hold it there until it decides to go off in about an hour.
I have my kettle.
All great questions. Anything else? All right. I travel a lot. So I figured I would at least include something I do to avoid hotel coffee. That's my AeroPress, right? I love this thing for traveling. It's super convenient. I travel with these two things, right? This is a collapsible kettle, fits right in a suitcase, right? Now, this one has no timer on it. You got to get it to boil. You got to wait on it to stop boiling. But I do everything I can to avoid hotel coffee. And this thing is fantastic. Pros to it: fast and portable, great for travel. You can make espresso style coffee, kinda. And it's easy to clean, right? You just toss out the filter, or I've actually got a permanent filter in this one that you just have to clean up. The cons, 1 cup at a time, and actually technically this size is actually less than 1 cup. So I actually brew this one a little stronger and then add a little hot water to it. And then it requires manual pressure. You have to actually press it, right? So that's one thing. If you press it too fast, you can blow it out on the sides and things like that. The ratios.
That's never happened to me ever.
Never. You've not done enough then. You will blow out the sides, and it's not fun because there's actually in a hotel there's no way to clean that stuff up. So, I use about the same ratio for coffee as far as coffee grams for my espresso, so about 18 grams. And I press this. I get this as high as I can. I don't think this one will quite hold 220 grams of water, but I get it as high as possible so that I can do it. Get as much out of it as I can. Pro tip: there's the inverted method, right? What the inverted method is you get this as close as possible to the bottom, and you brew your coffee this way, and you time it. So you wait about 2 minutes, with it inverted. So you put your coffee in, you put your water in on top, you stir it around, you wait about 2 minutes, then you cap it, and then you put it in your cup. Yeah, that makes a pretty good cup of coffee out of this. Matter of fact, I think they have an AeroPress competition, and I believe that's pretty much how they do it for the competitions at this point. But you don't have to do it that way. It's just it does make a much better cup of coffee, and it's a little more safe, in my opinion, from spillage and things like that.
How do you like the Prismo attachment? Is that the Prismo?
I've actually got the AeroPress. I mean the Fellow version. You're talking about the filter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only have the paper thing. Paper filter.
Yeah, so I actually upgraded this because it's been around the world. This thing here has. But yeah, they come with little paper filters. They're very thin.
Yeah.
This works much better, and it's easy to clean, and you don't have to worry about paper filters. That AeroPress makes a version of this now. When I bought this one, Fellow was the only one that made it. Yeah. So this combination travels with me everywhere I go, and I do travel a lot, so I carry this everywhere. And I love it. It makes really good coffee. As a matter of fact, if you get stuck on an airplane, right, a very long flight, just tell somebody to bring you a cup of hot water. They'll bring you almost boiling water, and you can make it with that right there on the airplane. So you avoid airplane coffee too.
That just changed my life. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Plain coffee.
Worst, yeah. All right, let's wrap this up. Invest in a good grinder. Grinder's game changer. I spent 6 slides in this presentation because of grinding, because it's so important to making good tasting coffee. Use fresh, well-stored coffee, no stale beans, right? That's proof. 4 weeks old. I mean, it makes such a difference in just 4 weeks, right? And you're buying 4-week-old at the grocery store most of the time. Experiment with different brewing methods. I went through a bunch of them. There's more, right? There's the percolator, which is really old school and kind of sentimental. But it's a good way to make coffee. But experiment and find what you like. Control your water temperature and brew times. The extraction is a big deal, right? So grind, water temperature, time. And then take time to make good coffee at home because it's worth it. Any questions? If not, I am going to do a quick demo. Yes?
I just had a quick one. I used to work with someone that drilled into my head that water quality made the best coffee. Is that true?
It is true. I mean, I do like filtered water or distilled water if I'm having to make it from bottles and things like that. Sometimes it isn't practical, but it does help to have good water.
Okay.
Yeah. That leads to some of the pH conversation you're talking about too. All right. Everybody got 5 more minutes for me to do it? This was fun. Thank y'all. I've actually got some ground coffee up here if anybody wants to take a look when we get done. I got some coarse ground, I got some medium fine, and my AeroPress fine. It's not quite espresso fine, but it is the fine that I use in the AeroPress. All right, paper filters. I always use paper filters for this, and I like the brown paper. I don't know if it makes that much of a difference, but you buy big boxes, they last forever. The trick here is the fold, right? So it's way simpler than it looks. You take it out of the box, and you peel one piece back. That's it. That's all you got to do. And you drop it in, right? That's it. So the next trick is it does 2 things for the next trick. It sticks the filter to the glass, but it also warms up your glass, right? So you just do that for a second, let that drain through. That's rinsing through the filter, gets any paperish flavors out. It sticks, so you don't have a filter that's moving around and driving you crazy, and it warms up the bottom of your canister. And you just kind of pour that out. You want to get rid of that water. Start your scale. I got it in grams, right? So 30 grams is what I'm shooting for. Medium fine, that's what I use. All right, that's 30 grams. Let's set a timer for that first minute. And this is what you call a bloom, right? You're gonna pour it in a rotate, right? So rotate clockwise or counterclockwise, whichever way you're most comfortable. And I get up to about, I don't know, about 90 grams of water for that bloom cycle. And I just let that set for the rest of that minute. I wish everybody could see the bloom. I wish there was a way to show that. But it blooms up, right? And it starts kind of, if anybody can stand and see it, see it kind of blooming out and bubbling up. So now it's getting close to what I call aerating itself, right? Where it's starting to show pockets. That's pretty much where I'm ready to add my next batch of water. So remember, we're going for about 475 grams of water. Where's my kettle? And then I do 2 more pours, right? So now I'll go up to about, I don't know, 250.
Is that a bellow kettle?
It is, yes. My wife bought it for me. Yeah. And then I let that set for a little bit. If you wait for it to completely drain through, you'll probably lose your spot in your scale. It'll go off on you. So I don't quite let it go that way just for practical reasons. I'll let it go for another minute or two, and then I'll do the last pour, get it to 475, and then I let that just extract out, and then you're done. Yeah, you can smell it when it. I thought I brought some sample cups, but I don't have any. Yes?
Can we do a pour over at home, but we use the metal filter that came with it and the paper? Can I just skip the metal filter?
You can. Yeah, as long as it'll fit in there. The paper filter's way better.
Okay.
And it's way easier to clean up. All right, let's finish this off. Yo. Huh? If people want to try it, then yeah, we need a sleeve of the sample cups.
Now, on a encore grinder, what size would you say I should be grinding that of the Barossa? Like, I've been doing it right under 30. You think that's too coarse, like 24? Maybe?
I don't know. My decaf grinder is the version you've got. I haven't ground it with that grinder in a long time to remember. But come and take a look at this one, and if you can make it match. All right, there we go. Now we just wait on it to finish. Again, that's why we call it Slow Coffee Sunday. But that's the end of the presentation. If everybody has any questions, fine.
How'd you make your coffee this morning?
Espresso. Yep, espresso before I left home. I've got one of the fancy little push button ones. So yeah, it's just one of I can't even remember the brand. Nope, keep going. Nope. The D starts with a D. DeLonghi, yes. Yeah, and it's the one that we had one in an office I had one time, and I really liked it, so I bought one of those for my house because it was super convenient. Thank you. So if you haven't had enough coffee and you want to try this, you're welcome to. It is not the same.
Right, so
Yeah.
different extraction, right?
Yeah. Iced coffee, legitimately, from where it's just coffee that you pour over ice. You've let it cool and you pour it over ice. So it's a brewed coffee that you just pouring over ice. All right, this is ready to go if anybody wants to try it. If not, thank y'all. I appreciate your time. Oh, I'm going to, quick shameless plug, I'm going to put this presentation on our website, district10coffee.com. If anybody wants it, go get it. Yeah, it'll be for free.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You did an amazing
So good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.